Star Wars only. I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
What's going on, Star Wars fans? I am Star Wars Only. We are back to do another Let's Talk Star Wars podcast, number 12. I know it's been a while. I've been busy editing that documentary, and I really appreciate you guys for being very supportive of that and also being very responsive to the documentary. It's blowing up pretty well so far. It's doing really good. The feedback is amazing, and I'm really glad we got it out there. And I'm pretty happy of it. I am pretty proud of it, and I'm pretty happy to see that everyone else likes it as well. So thank you for all that. Thank you for 30,000 subscribers as well. We've hit that. It's not the biggest milestone in the world. The next big one for this channel is probably going to be 50,000. I'm hoping to hit 40,000 by the end of 2019. We'll probably definitely hit that. But 100,000 is the goal, always has been the goal, and always will be the goal. Anything beyond that is just icing on the cake. So thank you guys for helping me reach my goal. And the first question we have here, we're going to get right into the podcast now, is from Mark Richards. Mark asks, after the subjectively disappointing Game of Thrones Subverse Season 8, are you worried about the next Star Wars trilogy? So we know the next Star Wars film in 2022 is going to come from David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the creators of the Game of Thrones show, not the books. I know people got mad at me for saying it was the creators of Game of Thrones. They created the show. They're producers and they're the writers of a lot of the episodes in the Game of Thrones series. I just finished Season 8 not too long ago, like maybe an hour ago. I watched all the entire series of Game of Thrones in a month. I just decided, hey, you know what? I want to see what everyone was talking about, what all the hype is about, and I did all of it. So now I've watched everything. Yes, Season 8, I could definitely see why everyone and why many people are disappointed with it. Does that make me worried for the next Star Wars trilogy? Yes. I do think the next Star Wars trilogy is going to have some similar themes to the Game of Thrones show in terms of it's going to do stuff to shock you and end on cliffhangers to keep you interested in the story. I think it's going to rely heavily on that, and that is a concern for me. I'm not a big fan of shocking the audience just to shock them, or doing taboo things just for the sake of doing them, subverting expectations just for the sake of subverting them. I don't think that's good storytelling. I'm not the biggest fan of Game of Thrones. I don't think it was the best show in the world. There are 2 seasons I really do like and actually did think was really good. Other than that, I wasn't a big fan of the show, but I'm pretty sure we'll get more questions about that later, and we can talk about that. This next question comes from, I can't say the name, but I'll put the name up here on the screen in the question. They say, what sort of stories do you most enjoy in Star Wars content? Warfare-centric, scoundrel stories, Force lore, or some other subject? Out of the 3, I'd have to pick Force lore. And the reason being is, I think that's the most interesting subject to cover. You have a lot of different fans in the Star Wars fandom now who like the warfare stuff, who only care about the action and really the coolness of the spaceships and everything, and people who are really into the spaceships and know everything about every ship, how they work, and what they're made of, all that stuff. And then you have people who are really into the expanded universe stories, and that's really it. They just like all the books and everything, and the overpower people in that as well. There's a lot of different taste in the Star Wars fandom. For me, it is the Force. It is learning more about that, the good versus evil. And you have different aspects of that in the expanded universe, in the show, and I like that. So I like it when a certain part of the Star Wars story, it can cover all 3 of those. It can cover the scoundrels and that aspect of the world in Star Wars. It can cover the Force lore of the Jedi and the Sith and the good versus evil, basically, and also the warfare stuff, because it is part of Star Wars. It is called Wars for a reason. There's a lot of good aspects of Star Wars, and if you can pull them off right, you get a good story. And I think one of the best stories you can focus on in Star Wars is the Force, and I really hope the future of Star Wars can kind of remember that. Samuel Johnson asks, if you had to live in the Star Wars timeline, what era would you pick? That's a tough one because there's only 2 or 3 eras right now that we know of that are canon. And you have the First Order era, which I would really rather not like to live in. You have the Old Republic era, the Empire era, and even that's kind of I'm not a really big fan of having a government like the Empire just destroy and do whatever the hell they want and kind of control all the planets. It's not that's not that good of a time in my opinion. So I'd probably have to go with the prequel era, the Republic, the Old Republic maybe, is that what they would call it in that time? Just whenever the Republic was around in general. that seems like the more peaceful time, before the Sith and before they destroy the Jedi. So if I had to pick an era, it would definitely be that, just for the simple fact that things seem to have been better. Neil C. asks, if you had to live on a planet in all of Star Wars, EU included, where would you pick? I've always said Coruscant, because I think Coruscant offers the most opportunities. If I could just pick for my own leisure and my own fun, I really wouldn't know. It would have to be somewhere with a lot of information about Star Wars, or like the world in general. Because like I said, I like learning about the Force. I like knowing about that stuff. So if there was a planet that I could go and learn more about that on, I'd probably just want to go there. If I had to live on it for the rest of my life, though, Coruscant might not be the best idea because it isn't that pretty. It's just a fun place to be, in my opinion. But maybe, I don't know. Naboo doesn't seem that bad. It is pretty. Wouldn't really like to be around the Gungans too often. There's a lot of planets out there that I can't remember. There's a planet that starts with the T. I can't remember the name of it that well. But there's a planet that starts with the T in the Star Wars world, in the Star Wars The Old Republic. And I think it's a, kind of grassy planet. It didn't look too bad. I like that one. Maybe that one. I don't know. Someplace nice. Someplace that I wouldn't have to worry about dying. Peter Laubry says, most emotional scene in each trilogy. Let's see. Well, the first trilogy, the prequel trilogy at least, we can say easily Revenge of the Sith, ending with Obi-Wan's, saying, "You're my brother, Anakin, I loved you." That was arguably probably the most emotional scene out of the prequel trilogy. I don't think you can really argue anything else is. In the original trilogy, you have a lot of different... you don't have a lot of different... You have a few different options. I think you have the ending with Luke and Vader, their final battle, and when Luke says never, and he just starts charging at him and loses his mind basically and goes all out, uses the dark side to defeat his father. That's a very emotional scene. You also have the part where he learns about his father. That also is an emotional scene. You also have when Han gets frozen in carbonite. A lot of people didn't think he was going to survive that. And also at the end of Return of the Jedi, you have the ending, the final shot, the ending of it. A lot of people think that's very emotional as well. It's a toss-up between all of them, but if I had to pick, I'd have to say Luke beating Vader. That scene will always give me chills. Always. No matter how many times I've watched that movie, and I've probably watched that movie more than any of the other ones, it still gives me chills to this day. Most emotional scene in the sequel trilogy is probably Luke dying, because I was so emotional. I was like, wow, they really fucking killed off Luke. God damn it. Alright, that was probably the most emotional for me in that one. I wasn't crying or anything. I was just like, well, fuck me, I guess. And out of the frying pan and into the fire. And this next question comes from IDK. He says, do you think Rian Johnson should never be involved with anything to do with Star Wars again after he messed up Episode 8? Let me put it to you like this. If he was taken out of Star Wars, I wouldn't miss him. But if he was put back into it, I wouldn't be overly sad, because I don't mind him getting his own story and going somewhere new and different, as long as he doesn't touch any character that has ever existed in the Star Wars universe or anything that has ever existed in the Star Wars universe. Go create your own story in it, in your own planets, characters, whatever. I don't care. Just don't touch Luke and don't touch the Jedi. Don't touch the Force. Just stay away from that, Ryan, please. Good God. I don't agree with his concepts of Star Wars, but I don't think the fans are being overly fair to him in a way. I mean, I've been very critical of Rian Johnson, as you know, and I'm not a fan of the movie, as you know. It is a very bad movie. I do not like The Last Jedi. But I don't mind listening to Rian Johnson talk about his ideas. I think he is creative enough. I liked Looper. I thought that was a very good movie growing up. I always will think that's a very good movie. And I think if given the chance, he could make a good Star Wars movie. But his response to the fans, his response to the criticism, his movie in general, it's all just not good. And I don't like that aspect of it. So Rian Johnson kind of comes with, he's like a 50-50 shot of being a good film, and you better pray it's a good film, because if it's a bad film, he ain't going to admit it, and he's going to make sure everyone else who disagrees with him knows he won't admit it. It's just kind of It's just it's the battle of the petty, in my opinion, and it's getting annoying at this point because it's been like 2 years. It's almost been 2 years since The Last Jedi's come out. It'll be 2 years this year, and it's gonna be at this point where it's like, God, that film is still bad. I hope the Episode 9 can improve it, but I don't know. We'll talk about that later. I'm sure more people are gonna ask about it. Revan Star asks, "Who's your favorite character in the Old Republic timeline?" That's a good question. I don't think I have a specific favorite character in the Old Republic timeline. Probably Zane. I think Zane is probably one of the better characters in the Old Republic timeline. I like him as well. I think he's a good character. There's other characters, but so I'm not a big fan of Revan. I always thought he was overrated. Who else is there that I like, at least? I mean, there's a lot of characters in general in the Old Republic timeline. There's so many. Darth Malgus was always one of my favorite Sith Lords. I thought he was pretty cool. Vitiate, wasn't a fan of him, but I liked him enough as the bad guy. Bane is definitely one of my favorite characters from that era, and so was Exar Kun. He's pretty interesting. So those characters are definitely probably some of my favorite from that Old Republic era. There's a lot of characters in the Old Republic that are very interesting. The next question comes from Pixie Bubbles. They ask, if you could write/direct your own trilogy, what would it be about? Man, a lot of people are asking me this every time, and I always can't seem to find the right answer that I'd want in general. I think, like I said earlier, I'd want to focus on the lore aspect of the Force. Who would I want to cover it about? What would I want it to be about? I really don't know. I would have to really sit down and think about it. I've always liked the idea of the Republic not being formed yet, and the Jedi Order and the Sith Order being separated as well, and them being at odds at each other, but they never fought. Like, they're not fighting at all. And let's just say the Sith Empire builds up, and they're like, hey, we're going to go destroy the world, take over it. You know, our peace is the only way to really enjoy peace, you know, by ruling with an iron fist. You have the Jedi who are like, no, people need to be free, and the Republic can't really pick between the two. It's one of those weird things where they have to pick which side they want. I think that wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. I think it'd be generic enough that I could have a good story, good writing in it, good dialogue with some characters, and more or less, I think one of the important aspects of Star Wars is you focus on a smaller character that is just along for the ride of this bigger adventure, this bigger journey. I would have the main character, you know, be like either a Jedi Knight or a Sith Acolyte who is just kind of at the bottom of the ranks in terms of which side they're on. And they're not the chosen one, they're not, you know, chosen for any specific journey or any destiny, really. They're just there to do their part. And along that journey, along their story, they're seeing all the events unfold. They don't really have too much sway over them. There's like a general on each side that is, you know, at each other for bitter reasons, basically. And the main character doesn't have to worry about that. The main character doesn't know too much about that aspect of it because it's not their story, but they're a part of it. It may sound confusing, but it's kind of like Anakin not being the reason the Clone Wars happened. He was just part of it. Palpatine always planned it to happen. I would like something like that without Anakin being the chosen one. Him just being kind of another Jedi Knight. Not destined for anything great. Just, you know, normal. Of course, he's like us, you know, a normal average day Joe who happens to, yes, be a Jedi Knight. But he wouldn't go on this grand quest of an adventure where at the end of it all, he's the one who defeats the Emperor of the Sith or the King of the Sith, whoever the hell is running the Sith Empire. That wouldn't be the ending goal of the films. And the whole purpose of that would be to stick true a little bit to what Lucas was looking forward to using the droids for in the original trilogy. He used them as the bottom characters to really tell the story. They're not, I mean, they hold sway over the entire story, but they're just kind of along for the ride. And in some cases, they are the entire adventure. R2-D2 is definitely someone you want to stick around with for the entire Star Wars saga because he's lived through all 9 films now. But the entire story isn't about R2. You know, he's just kind of the side character that just happens to be there the entire time through his own dumb luck. I would like that, but for a human character, for the main character. I think that'd be a good idea. But, you know, who the fuck knows? We'll never know, because I'm never going to make a trilogy. That one Smokey asked, favorite prequel trilogy character? I know they're not the best, but I'd argue some like Qui-Gon are underrated/underdeveloped, but had the potential to be great. Yes, Qui-Gon is underdeveloped. I don't think he's underrated. I do think he's underdeveloped and didn't have that wasn't used properly. My favorite prequel trilogy character, I don't know if I have one. I am not trying to throw shade at the prequels, but I don't know if there's a character in that trilogy I care about at all. I mean, honestly, if I had to pick one, it'd have to be like Obi-Wan. He's the only one with morals I think I could be fully behind. Yoda's cool enough. I mean, he's Yoda. I don't know. I don't have a lot of favorite prequel trilogy characters. I honestly don't. I'm not trying to throw shade, but there's just not a lot of character in the prequel trilogy. But if I had to pick one, I mean, I guess Obi-Wan by default. This next question comes from Jim. He says, if you could choose any MCU director to direct a Star Wars trilogy, who and why? Oh, my bad. Not to direct, to do a Star Wars trilogy. If that's the case, it would probably be Jon Favreau. I think Jon Favreau is talented. I hope he does really well at the Mandalorian show. And if I had to pick one from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it would have to be Jon, because he's a Star Wars fan. He's working on Star Wars. He seems to know what the fans want. And I think he started off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think he'd be the worst idea for a candidate to pick to produce and probably write a Star Wars trilogy. I think that'd be a really good idea. So definitely Jon Favreau. Derek Woods asks, would you want George Lucas to come on board for a creative consultant? Yes, definitely. It's his story in a way. He has always been the kind of focus of the story. He's built it, and people have expanded upon it really well. And I think you need him to kind of give you a nice little seed for a story and an idea and expand upon that idea. I think he would be a really good creative consultant for any story or any Star Wars story. This next question comes from Patrick McDuff. He asks, who's your favorite Star Wars character? I think everyone asks this question as well. It is always going to be Luke Skywalker. I cannot be biased towards anyone else but Luke Skywalker. Honestly, he's probably my favorite character of all time. Boy Scout 117 asks, two simple questions, Empire or Rebels? Definitely Rebels. He says, I personally side with the Empire, and or what is your favorite piece of music in the Star Wars franchise? My favorite piece of music from the Star Wars franchise? There's a lot, man. Duel of Fates is really good. The opening theme, the main Star Wars theme, I also really like the ending to Return of the Jedi, the special edition one. That one's actually pretty good in terms of music, the song. And then also the scene where Luke and Vader are fighting in Return of the Jedi. That is also a really good piece. So I don't have a choice. I don't have a personal pick, but those are among the best. Next question is from Battle Tested. He asks, do you feel Disney will try to take their animated Star Wars shows more seriously from now on, since they see the impact the Clone Wars has had on the fan base? Maybe. Maybe they're going to do like one last one with Dave Filoni and give him that kind of closure of story with Ahsoka and Ezra and Sabine. I think that'd be a good idea. I don't think they're done with the animated Star Wars shows just yet. I think that'll be one of the future shows they touch upon one day. I don't know when it'll be, but one day. Will they take it more seriously from now on? I mean, do you think they were playing around the first time? I mean, are you trying to say like maybe they're going to have a more serious and darker tone? If that's the case, probably not. Definitely I wouldn't bank on that. But more seriously, I don't think they've been taking it any less serious than they have been. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know what you mean by serious. I'm sorry. It's because, I mean, Disney with Rebels, they brought it out to bring in a new part of the fandom, and that worked. They brought in more people to the fandom, and they also brought in a new audience to the fandom, a younger audience, and just a different audience in general. And then you also have Star Wars Resistance to really get another younger audience. They're not in it for us older people anymore. People who grew up on the Clone Wars. Season 7 is going to do good no matter what, because it's nostalgia for you kids who grew up with the Clone Wars. So I don't really expect them to focus too much on the Clone Wars as they would something on Resistance or something like the next show after Rebels, after Resistance and everything. I think Clone Wars is going to be the focus for a few years, but they have these live action shows they're really going to focus on instead of the animated stuff. So yeah, I don't think animation, and especially animated Star Wars shows, are going to be the forefront of the Star Wars show future. I think the future of Star Wars shows are with the live action shows. Animated's kind of, it's kiddie. I mean, it's always been kiddie. So for people like us who are getting a little older, it's going to be like, do you really want to stick around for the Clone Wars kind of show? The question is, do you want more stuff that's going to try to be like the Clone Wars? The Rebels was trying to be like the Clone Wars. They brought back constantly characters from the Clone Wars. And then you have Resistance, which is like Rebels in a way, just a little less than Rebels. So do you want to keep diminishing the... So I don't think they're going to rely on the animated shows anymore. I think they're really going to be focusing on these live action shows. So that's my take on it. Falcon asks, how do you think JJ will bring Palps back? Do you think he will use Legends material? Legends material, probably not. I think he's going to use the stuff that we have from canon, and I think he's going to try to shock us. I think he's going to try to have a big twist with it. I'm not sure what it is. I really don't have much speculation. I've thought it was going to be the Vader thing with the Darth Momin, where he basically puts his spirit into an object or something. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do anything too unique like that, where it's going to be an object that Palpatine has put himself in. I think they're going to try to do something with the dark side of the Force, like a mysterious aspect of it that we haven't seen yet. So I definitely think it's going to be something new. Fofo the Jedi asks, would you give Rian Johnson another chance with his new trilogy, even though you didn't like Episode 8? I would give him one more movie. Like, if he has a trilogy, and he writes all three of them, and he directs all three of them, I would only watch the first one. And if the first one was good, I would say, okay, I'll go see the next one. But if the first one's bad, I would say, I'm done, Brian, I'm sorry. You haven't caught my attention yet, you don't deserve any more of it. And the only reason I'm going to go see his Star Wars movies in the first place is to give you guys the reviews for it and give you guys my opinion on it. But in terms of wanting to see his Star Wars films, I don't want to. I've seen his Star Wars vision. I'm okay without seeing it ever again. But if he happens to make more Star Wars films, yeah, I'm going to give him one more shot. I'll be like, I'll give you one more movie. I'll buy the ticket one more time to see one more Star Wars movie by you. But if you can't improve after The Last Jedi, then yeah, we're done here, Ryan. I'm sorry. So yeah, I would give him one more chance. But beyond that, David asks, given the ending of Game of Thrones, the fact that one of them did X-Men Origins Wolverine, etc., what are your thoughts on the D&D new trilogy? Do we know anything new about it? Anything new? No. What we do know is that these guys don't seem to know what the fuck they're doing when it comes to stories. Game of Thrones ending in season 8 was awful, in my opinion. I don't think the story was concluded really in any way. I don't think the story answered anything. When I ended Game of Thrones, I really went, what the fuck was the point of all that? I mean, I really wondered what the fuck was the point of all of it. I've spent the past month watching the show, trying to understand, and the ending of season 8 made a lot of Game of Thrones fans ask themselves the questions I've been asking since season 1, and that is, what the fuck is the point of this entire story? I mean, I really don't know what the hell they thought the story of Game of Thrones is going to be about. I think they're going to try to play their cards really safe. I really think the David Benioff and D.B. Weiss guys, I don't think they knew what the hell to do with the Night King, and they knew what to do with Cersei, the queen, or whatever the hell you want to call her. I think they knew what they wanted to do with her. And so they wanted to focus the story of Season 8 on her and play it safe. Because they didn't know what the fuck to do about the Night King. Because no one really knew what the hell the Night King was, or what was going to happen, or what he really wants. So they just kind of were like, you know what, whatever, you know, that happens, fuck it. Cersei, we'll worry about Cersei, we know her. I hate that. Let's hope they don't play it safe in this new trilogy. Let's hope this new trilogy isn't some run-of-the-mill Star Wars story that we've seen 1,000 times before. It's not like a rehash of Rogue One, and the ending of the trilogy is like Palpatine being born by his mother or something like that, and oh no, it all took place right before the prequels. Oh shit, now he's got to grow old, and like that would be annoying. But I wouldn't be surprised if they ended their trilogy with some big reveal, like someone like looks up and their eyes are red because they turned into a Sith guy or something. That would be the D&D kind of trilogy. That would be the stuff they would do. So I'm not entirely excited anymore. I'm concerned, but I've always been concerned. Do we know anything new about it? No, but we know new stuff about what they're capable of, and let's pray to God that they don't fuck it up. Ace Lion 7 asks, what's your favorite type of clone? I'm sorry, buddy, but I just don't care. So that's my answer. Lucas Diego asks, what's your opinion about the Star Wars Disney today? Not only movies, but also comics, books, TV games. I think so far it's been just a massive disappointment. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world, But it's one of those things where it's like, so that's where you went with it. That's where you took the franchise. Okay. The comic books aren't that good. They've gotten better as of recently, but not too much. The books are disappointing, to say the least. The TV shows, Rebels was decent. It got better as time went on. It wasn't that good. The games have been a drastic fuck up. Good God. That's... Out of everything, that's the one thing that's still on fire right now. Like, in terms of, like, a flaming pile of shit. Battlefront 2 has gotten better over time, thank God, but it's still shit. The movies have been decent. You have Rogue One, The Force Awakens. Those were okay. But then after that, it just got worse. So it's not in a good state. How about that? 2019 is going to be a better year for Star Wars, and it'll be a good year. But God, these past few have just been awful. But I do think today, right now, in May of 2019, Star Wars has a bright future ahead of it. A concerning bright future ahead of it. It's like the flame at the end of the tunnel, but you can feel this gust of wind called the Phantom Menace right behind you, and it may blow out that candle at the end of the tunnel. But if that candle can be lit a little more with some fucking magic, if they can make some good quality Star Wars content, that candle can survive the damn wind. But right now, it doesn't seem like Disney wants to keep the fire going anymore. But as they say in The Last Jedi, the greatest Star Wars movie of all time, we are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down. Even when saying it, it doesn't sound that good. I don't know who wrote that and decided that was a line we should keep. Next question comes from Richard. He asks, looking forward to the Mandalorian, I assume? I know I am. It looks like it's heading in the right direction, story-wise, an awesome cast ahead. Freaking IG-88 is supposed to be in it. I got a bad news for you there, buddy. YouTube channel Looper did some details about it. Well, Looper is fucking wrong. It's not IG-88 in that it's what's his name? It's like IG-37 or something like that. Jon Favreau confirmed it's not IG-88, so that kind of sucks. Looper's been doing a lot of Marvel stuff lately. They should probably stay away from Star Wars. Fun fact about that, I actually have worked with Looper in the past on one of their Instagram accounts or whatever. I did like some sponsor stuff with them a year or two ago, so that's kind of cool to see them grow to what they have grown to. I remember when they were a little smaller, and it was nice working with them. They were nice people. This next question comes from the longtime subscriber Winston Shee, I believe is how you say it. Are you not hyped for the Benioff and Weiss trilogy after Game of Thrones Season 8? Especially since Rian might collaborate with them. Oh yeah, he is collaborating with them. Oh no. This just got more interesting. I don't know what to expect from them, because I'd never understood the hype behind Game of Thrones. I stopped watching after Season 2 because I thought the first half of Season 2 was just awful, and I really didn't understand why everyone was so excited about this show and why everyone thought it was so good. They copied a lot from the books. It looks like, from what I've heard and what I've seen, they wrote the show based off the books. And since Season 8 is the conclusion of the Game of Thrones, and the books for the Game of Thrones series isn't out yet, like the final conclusion for them isn't out, the final books, it looks like they had to make the story on their own. And they fucked up drastically on that. They didn't even really finish the story. They were just kind of like, oh, well, yep. That's basically Season 8. Just a big ol' yep. Am I hyped for the next Star Wars movie? No. Am I intrigued? A little bit. Because I do think Game of Thrones had some potential, and it did have some good quality stuff about it. It's not the worst show in the world at all, but it definitely is not the best show that everyone was making it out to be. Season 8 wasn't shocking to me, in a way. I wasn't surprised by how disappointing it was, because I think the entire show has been like that. I'm not entirely hyped because I feel like when it comes to telling the story, mainly in the show, from what I've gotten from Game of Thrones at least, is that it takes forever to get anywhere. Season 1, Ned Stark is like, winter is coming. We gotta get ready, guys. Winter is coming. Season 8, winter finally came. Thank God. So if in episode 1 of the trilogy, they're like, all right, the Sith Empire is coming, I would expect by the end of episode 2 of the trilogy, the Sith Empire would finally show up. I mean, that's probably not even then. They probably wouldn't even show up till episode 3, if we're going to be honest. At the end. That's more or less what would happen. The end of episode 3 would be the Empire had finally shown up. I'm going to be ranting about this all day. Let's get to the next question. Next question is from How Old Are You? He says, Hey Star Wars Only, I just started a Twitter account called The Star Wars Guy. You were my biggest inspiration for doing so. That's not a question, that's a statement. But thank you, How Old Are You? I'm glad I inspired you to do so. Good luck with Twitter. That place is awful. I don't like being on there. It's necessary to be on there, but it's not pleasant. This next question is from a guy named Daniel. He says, Do you think David Benioff and D.B. Weiss should stay away from Revan and his friends for their proposed Old Republic trilogy? Why or why not? Is it possible that in some way Revan trained Ahsoka in the Temple of Malachor 5 if canonized? Whoa, bro, you are expecting way too much from Revan already. He's not even confirmed to be canon at the moment, so I don't think they're going to focus on Revan. I do think they should stay away from him. I don't think it'll be an Old Republic trilogy. I do think it'll be in a time of the Old Republic, but it's not going to be about the Old Republic, if that makes sense. This next question is from Halo Rocket 54. He says, What are your thoughts on Finn's character arc? Finn's character arc wasn't bad. Episode 7, The Force Awakens, he starts off as a trooper, he runs away from everything, fair enough. And then at the end of it all, he kind of stays and fights. He fights Kylo Ren, the biggest bad of them all, whatever. Not bad. Episode 8 is more or less about him running away again. And finally, at the end of it all, he turns around and he's like, you know what, I'm not going to run anymore. I'm going to help my friends, and I'm going to sacrifice myself to help my friends. I like that. Then Rose happened. I don't know what they're going to do with Episode 9, with Finn's arc. Hopefully, he can, instead of focusing on, let's say, running away from everything, and now that he's not running away from anything anymore, he's finally, set in stone, battling and being the hero he needs to be. What I'm hopeful in Episode 9 is that he can actually be the hero. He can actually be the guy who rallies his friends, who gets people who are in the First Order, the Stormtroopers, his fellow brothers or whatever, to really rally behind him and see that the First Order is maybe evil in a way. Something like that. Give him something not just to do, but some meaning in Episode 9. Episode 8, it felt like he didn't have too much meaning. He just had to go on this little side journey again to help out Rey. He's going to look for Rey, and that's good. He's very loyal. He's a very good friend. Nice, good for him. Well, now I want to see that loyalty when he's with Rey, and I want to see the adventure that he and Poe go on together with Rey, because I think their friendship is really good. It was something that was missing in Episode 8 that they capitalized on really well in Episode 7. Episode 9 needs to capitalize on that even more. We need to give Finn and Poe a little more struggle, not just with each other, but with the story itself, and we need them to actually evolve a little more as characters in this final arc of, are these people really worthy enough to be a part of the Skywalker saga? And so far, not really. Byron Schwartz asked, during Celebration you said you found out a long speculated rumor about Episode 9. What was the rumor that was confirmed? I can't say too much. What I can say, though, is that it's not about the story of Episode 9. A lot of people were asking about that, is it about the Emperor and everything? It does have something to do with the Emperor, I will give you that. But it's more along the lines of the business decisions and who is actually in charge of Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. That is what has confirmed a long speculated rumor. What confirmed it, though, is what I'm definitely not allowed to say. But I was able to confirm a long speculated rumor that I was suspicious of. I'll probably touch on that a little more now that we're done with the documentary, and I have time now. I can probably touch on that a little more, but I need to reveal it the way I need to reveal it. I can't say too much, but I can say enough. Frostgear asks, what is your favorite Lego Star Wars set of all time? Do I have a favorite set? I'm not sure. I wasn't a big Star Wars Lego fan when I was a kid. I didn't buy all the Legos and constantly build all the sets. It just took too long. So I don't have one. If I do, I don't remember it. I'm sorry. I do remember building one of the AT-AT walkers when I was younger, and I did like that. So maybe that one. Ian PG9 asks, what other Star Wars projects do you want to see in the future, and who would create them? One project I think would be a great idea would be a live-action Star Wars show about the Jedi Knights. Just call it Jedi Knights, and just have it be about the Jedi on the Old Republic, or the First Order of the Jedi, something like that. Touch a little more about the Sith and the Jedi. That's something I've been missing in this new trilogy. It's not about the Jedi and the Sith. It's about destroying the Jedi and the Sith and creating its own new stuff, which is cool. You want to do your own little story, good. Go do your own thing. but I fell in love with the idea of the Jedi. And I'm sorry, but the Jedi that have been shown in the Star Wars movies have disappointed me almost every fucking time. The prequel Jedi are boring, bland. They die off far too soon before I care about any of them. There's only like 4 of them that even talk, and they're all just idiots. And they're all failures, basically. That's what the whole message is in the sequel trilogy, is that the Jedi are failures. And that's fine. If you want to make them failures, that's your merchandising rights fucking project, whatever the hell you want to call it now. You do that. But I still like the Jedi. I still like the idea of the Jedi. And I've yet to see the Jedi do what the Jedi are supposed to do, and what the Jedi said they're going to do, and what the Jedi are founded on doing. And that is bringing peace to the Republic and peace to the world and just being good people. I haven't seen that yet. Can I see that? Can I get a show about that? God forbid I see the Jedi do what they were set to do in the original trilogy. It's a story that I've been wanting since I was a kid, and I would love to see that come to fruition. Because not only have I been waiting on it, but everyone's been waiting on it. Everyone's been waiting on seeing the Jedi and the Sith at their full power going at each other. Or just the Jedi at their full power and actually being good, protecting the galaxy instead of letting it go to ruins every fucking movie. Just something new like that would be nice. That's a project I would love to see happen. Who would I want to do it? I'd probably have to pick Dave Filoni just because I think he can understand the Jedi the way I personally would want them to be. That's just me being biased, not just towards him, but just towards the idea of the Jedi being the way I, Star Wars only, want them to be. I think Dave Filoni could capture that pretty well. Would it be great? Maybe not. Maybe Dave doesn't do it right, but I think he wouldn't be the worst choice in the world. David and Leanna Phillips ask, DC or Marvel? Definitely Marvel in terms of movies. In terms of comic books and stories, it's probably going to have to be DC. You can't really beat Batman. Crocodile Key Productions asks, do you think that there's one good First Order officer? Define good in terms of character, in terms of morals, probably. Second question he asks is, would you have liked a show about how the Empire turned to the First Order and how it was formed in the unknown regions, or the show Resistance? I definitely don't care about the Resistance. I would definitely like to learn about the unknown regions. That's another aspect of the Star Wars universe I'm very intrigued with. Not only because it doesn't even really touch on the Force that much, but it does in a way, because Palpatine has, I guess, speculated that there's some powerful Force entity out there in the unknown regions. I want to expand on that. I want to see what that is about. I want to learn about that, because there's some mystery to it. There's some story to be told. And the story we're getting is just the same shit we've already gotten. So yes, I would love a show about that. Will it happen? Not likely. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Mandalorian show touches on that just a little bit. This next question comes from Aaron K. When do you think you'll finally watch the Indiana Jones movies? Because in my opinion, to be a Star Wars fan, you have to watch the Indiana Jones movies. That's a weird fucking argument. Mostly because they're by George Lucas, and it's good to see other movies other than Star Wars, or his other movies than Star Wars. Aaron, the biggest problem with that argument is that by that standard, you would have to watch THX 1138 as well to be a Star Wars fan, because that's George Lucas's first movie, or his first big movie in Hollywood, and he got really mad because he cut 5 minutes of footage from it. You also have to watch American Graffiti, not only part 1, but also part 2, because he helped write the script for that one and was the producer. That also means you need to watch his documentary that he did when he was filming with Francis Ford Coppola on Francis Ford Coppola's big movie where Lucas was his assistant. He was just documenting the whole thing for some fucking reason. There's a lot of arguments against that, and I don't think you have to see Indiana Jones to be a fan of Star Wars. I think it's a really bold statement, and I think it's a really false statement. Do I think you need to watch him to appreciate George Lucas? Yes. Do I like Indiana Jones? I've seen the first one. It is a really good movie. I really did enjoy it. I do think it's a good movie, but I don't think you have to watch it to be a fan of George Lucas. And the other ones actually kind of show George Lucas and what he does with a good story like that. He keeps going on and on and on about it. I mean, have you seen the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles? Those are not that great either. And a lot of people were mad about that, but those came from George Lucas. So you can't really... You got to pick your poison on that, you know? You can't say one thing and mean the other, you know? George Lucas is a confusing topic, but I wouldn't say you have to be a fan of Star Wars only if you study him religiously, because I've read books about this guy nonstop already. I know a lot about him, but that doesn't make me more of a Star Wars fan than the next guy. This next question is, if the Old Republic era included what D&D will cover in the next couple films, what part of the era do you want them to cover? Oh man, everybody really wants them to be in the Old Republic. I don't know what part of the era I'd want them to cover. I mean, they're not doing anything that's canon. They're doing something completely different than what we've seen. So I don't think the expanded universe is like a good reference point to really go off of. I don't know what era I'd want them to go off of. I'd want them to stay as far away from the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy as they can. Just go to a different era and create different stories. That's all I care about. Manga Fruit asks, what do you think of Emily Clark's Daenerys character in the movie Solo? Oh, Kira, I think is her name in Solo. You talking about Khaleesi? We could just call her Khaleesi in Solo. Wouldn't that be funny if that was her name? They're just like, hey, Khaleesi. Anyways, she was okay. She was a more interesting character than like Jyn from Rogue One. I think the characters in Solo were actually a lot better than the ones that you saw in Rogue One. And I think Kira was definitely an interesting character. She wasn't the best. She was a character whose fate I do want to see kind of pan out a little bit more. Whoever plays her is a good actress. Emilia Clarke, yeah, she's a pretty good actress. I like her. This next question comes from Devin. He asks, if you had a bar fight with any Star Wars character, who would it be? It'd probably have to be Hux. I don't like him. He annoys me. He acts like a spoiled brat. He's always yelling and just annoying. It just annoys me. And that's probably how the fight would go. Is I would just say, Hux, you're annoying me. And he would make a threat, and then we'd fight. So yeah, it'd probably be Hux. This next question, which it's not really a question, but it's a ranking. He says, rank top 3 third acts in Star Wars. That's pretty easy. The third one is going to be Return of the Jedi. That third act is really good, followed up by New Hope. And then finally, Empire Strikes Back. This is the best third act out of all these Star Wars movies. He also asked another question, why do you not like the Avengers Assemble scene? Because it was a cringy scene, honestly. I really did not like it. You know, Captain America's like, Avengers! And he whispers, he's like, Assemble! What the fuck? They can't hear you. And that's not even the complaint of it. It's just they took time out of a story of the movie to make not even a joke, but a fan service scene like that. They literally brought back all those characters from the dead just to please all the fans so you could all see them charging in at once. I think it would have been a really cool idea just to have Captain America take down Thanos' army, take on the entire army of Thanos by himself. And as he's running, he sees on the left and right of him more people from the dead, like Black Panther, like Bucky, coming back and helping him out. You know, Sam, on your left or something, he's running or flying right by him. That would be a little more cool because that's more of a reveal. This was predictable and generic of, hey, everyone's coming back through these portals. He's like, Avengers, assemble. Half these fuckers aren't even from the Avengers. These people are from Wakanda. And other people are from, what's that place, Asgard? Was the Asgard people back? Didn't that one lady, the bird on the horse, die? Where was she in Infinity War? There's so many questions I have from Endgame still that they're never going to answer because it wasn't a good movie and all that buildup was for a bunch of fucking fan service in a 3-hour movie. I'm sorry. It just was not a good film. The Brazilian Gamer asks, what do you think the new Star Wars movies will be about and what do you want them to be about if there's any difference between the two? What do I think they will be about? I think they will be about the older aspects of the Star Wars universe and kind of how the Republic came to be. What do I want them to be about? I want them to be about the old Jedi aspects of the Star Wars universe and how those came to be. iBrutal asks, will you ever post gaming on your channel? I know your first video was Battlefront commentary. Been here ever since. Damn, you have been around for a while. Can't wait to see you get to 1 million. I don't think that's entirely likely, but it would be nice to see, I guess. Well, I post gaming stuff, yeah. When Jedi Fallen Order comes out this year, I'll put some videos out. I'll do a review on it. I'll tell you if you should buy it or not, and probably do a bunch of gameplay, do a let's play, whatever. I'm hoping that game is really good. I'm going to be pretty disappointed if it's not. This next question comes from David. He asks, do you want the Disney Plus shows to release all episodes for a season at once, or let them release a week or so at a time? I like letting them release a week at a time. I think that lets the fandom and people kind of talk about their feelings about the show and process it and then go on to the next episode and everything instead of just watching it all at once nonstop. That's how I watched the Game of Thrones show. I watched all of it. I didn't wait a week between each shows or anything. I just watched everything nonstop, back to back. So a lot of the big shocks at the end of it, a lot of the big twist reveals and everything, the cliffhangers they have, it gets really annoying to me. And if they do that with The Mandalorian and it comes all out at once, then you're going to have that same problem. I've heard that they're actually just going to come out with every week, a new episode every week and a new content all the time like that. Not really coming out all in one big bulk. A new season comes out with 20 episodes. They're just going to come out with 12, and they're going to be spread across like 12 weeks. So that's not the worst idea in the world. I think it's a good idea, and I'm glad they're sticking to that. Mr. Clickbait Reborn asks, will you have any YouTube giveaways coming up? I definitely shouldn't I? I'll probably do one for 50,000 subscribers, and I'll definitely do one for 100,000, but that is something in the future that I want to start doing. Right now, it's not the easiest thing in the world. I'm still in college. I'm trying to get the YouTube set up a little better than what I have it as right now. It's already pretty good, but I want to get it a lot better and just keep building like that. So give it time. This next question comes from Denzel O'Reilly. It's a good name, actually. He asks, favorite moment in The Last Jedi, even though we know you didn't exactly like it. My favorite moment in The Last Jedi? It's going to have to be with R2 and Luke when they were reuniting. And he's like, that was a cheap move. That was actually a really good scene. I like that scene. Moose Films asks, would you rather have a 4K release of all Skywalker Saga movies or an official release Blu-ray of despecialized editions of Star Wars 1977? I'm sorry. I could give a fuck about the prequels or the sequels or even the originals in 4K. I would trade all of that just to get the officially released Blu-ray despecialized edition of Star Wars. I know some people are going to be like, oh, that's a stupid thing. No, you don't understand. That is something we've been waiting on for over 20 years now. Good God. Can't wait to get that. Hopefully one day we do get that. The fans deserve it. We're owed it. It's something that the fandom needs. And it would be definitely a good sign if Disney could pull that off. This next question is from Michael, I don't know how to say it, buddy, I'm sorry. He says, can The Rise of Skywalker somehow redeem The Last Jedi in your eyes? And if yes, how? Can it redeem it? Yes, but I can't answer a question I don't know the answer to yet. How can it redeem it? I don't know. You have to execute the story a lot better. You have to tie in The Last Jedi properly with Episode 9. I love what JJ has been saying about this movie because he's saying exactly what I want to hear. And I've always said, this movie needs to stand on its own, but it needs to tie up the entire saga. That's a hard thing to do. And JJ has admit this. JJ has said this. It's a hard thing to do, but he says that was the goal, to have a movie that stands on its own, but ties up all the other films really well together. I like that. I like hearing that. And that means he understands what I want in a way. And I think that's a good thing to stride for when you're making a film. I'm not sure how he's going to do it. I'm not sure what the story is going to be like, what's it going to be about, but I'm pretty confident that The Last Jedi isn't going to be the focus of Episode 9, and I think that'll be enough for the fans. The next question is from Mian1001. I don't know how to say your names, guys. I'm so sorry. I never get these right. He asks, I just watched your Phantom Menace documentary, and I have to ask, if the kids who grew up with Episodes 1, 2, and 3 are beginning to come around to liking them, how do you think the kids now growing up with the modern films think of them in 20 years? Exactly the way you people feel about the prequels. I hate to admit it, and I hate to say it, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you prequel fanboys are literally just repeating history, and you don't even know it. And they're loving the prequel films now, and they're saying, oh, they're so good, they're so great, and they were always misunderstood because they grew up with them and they like them, and that's fair. I grew up with them as well. But they grew up with them and they like them, and so they're saying, oh, these films are underrated, these are really good, and they're great. But the sequels are not, and they're not a good part of the fandom. They're not a good part of Star Wars. These are a spit in the face of George Lucas. So now what's going to happen is in 20 years, the fandom's going to look back, and they're going to say, hey, those sequel films were actually really good. I remember growing up with them. And those prequel films, yeah, they're shit. Just because you grew up with them doesn't mean they're good. And the fact that you were giving shit to the sequel fans, or to the sequel trilogy and the sequel actors and everything, is awful, and you should feel ashamed about that. And Kelly Marie Tran is, we're going to applaud her when she gets on stage. It's like poetry, it rhymes. And I think in 20 years, the prequel fans are not even going to remember half this shit. And they're going to look back and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, I forgot about all that. Oh, shit, history really did repeat itself. People grow up and they like the films that they liked when they were kids. And that's exactly what happened with the prequels, and it's exactly what's going to happen with the sequels. It's not even like it's a sad thing. It's just exactly how it's going to happen. It's how the fandom works. It's how the fandom works. It's a generational kind of thing. And Star Wars is going to be like that for the years to come. So the prequels and the original trilogy will not be looked upon as fondly in 20 years as we look at them now. In 20 years, people are probably going to like the sequels a lot more than they're going to like any other trilogy. And maybe, even maybe 30 years from now, they're going to really like the David Benioff and D.B. Weiss trilogy than they are compared to the other trilogies that we have. So it's going to be a continual generational thing, and I'm going to be here to document it all. Next question comes from a guy named Life with Randy. He asks, do you feel that the franchise would be in a better spot had Lucas not sold it? I'm not sure what kind of spot we'd be in. I'm not sure if we'd have the sequel trilogy by now. We probably would have. We probably would have had some Star Wars sequels going on by now. Maybe a spin-off film or two. But it wouldn't be much. It wouldn't be one every year. And you may have had a show by now. Maybe it would have had a live-action Star Wars show. Season 8 for Clone Wars would have ended by now, and the Clone Wars would have been over. It would have been at a very confusing time. A better spot? No. How about that? Because a better spot right now is where we're at, where we have endless opportunities into the future of Star Wars. Are they good opportunities? Are they going to be opportunities that they capitalize on, that they execute properly? Probably not. But we have those opportunities. I think Lucas knew with him in charge, there wasn't too many opportunities to go to in the future. After the prequels, I don't think Lucas really knew what to do anymore after that backlash, and we all know he didn't want to come back and direct. So I think he looked at it and said, you know what? There's more opportunities with Disney. Good fucking luck. And here we are. The 1971 Cuda asks, what trooper do you think is cooler? Clone Troopers, Classic Stormtrooper, or New Trilogy Stormtrooper? Cooler? Probably Clone Troopers. Honestly, they don't miss everything. This next question is, would you like an R2-D2 and C-3PO movie? I'm okay. I've seen them in like 9 films now. I don't really need any more. Nightstar1 asks, what's your favorite of the prequels? Probably Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith is the best one out of all 3 of them. It's kind of hard to argue that it's not, honestly. It's far better than Attack of the Clones, which is worse than The Phantom Menace, which is far worse than Revenge of the Sith. J. Andrew Munoz asks, what would you say made the original trilogy superior to both the prequels and the sequels? What did it have more at the core that the other 2 trilogies lacked? That's a very good question. I think what really the original trilogy had that the other films don't have is magic to it. I think there was some magic to it. There was some universal truths to it. The religious aspect of the Force and the destiny that we have in life is something that connects everybody in a worldly level. The prequels didn't really evolve off of that. The prequels were about this chosen one, this boy who's the chosen one, and the tragedy of him falling. There wasn't really any connection to character in the prequels. I mean, you can like the films all you like, good for you, I don't care, but there's not a connection that I have with any of those characters. The characters in the prequels are not really characters you connect with on a personal level, and perhaps they weren't meant to be, but the sequel trilogy is meant to connect to you on a personal level, and it did that alright in The Force Awakens, but it was just a copy of A New Hope. It was a stepping stone, and then it jumped off a cliff after it stepped on that stone with Episode 8. So now you have to have Episode 9 completely change that and add some magic that we haven't had in the past 2 films. The prequel trilogy didn't have any magic in it, in my opinion, because there was no humanity in it. Everything was blue screen. It looked very clean. The actors weren't really able to respond with a lot of emotion, and due to that lack of emotion, I had to focus on the story instead of the characters. And the story of the prequels, while not the worst, didn't have the greatest execution. So it's one of those weird things with the prequels where it's a decent story that just was not told the way it needed to be told, or the way it wanted it to be told, or should have been told. I don't think Lucas hit the marker. He might have hit it for himself in terms of visual and technology and everything, of him saying, hey, I made something completely that's never been done before, that's revolutionizing the film industry. While yes, you're right, you also made something that didn't really capture the story that the fans had wanted for a while, and also didn't capture the magic of Star Wars. It added to the Star Wars universe, and for some people it did have some magical moments for them, but like I said earlier, a large part of that is due to the fact that they were kids, and Star Wars is supposed to capture the magic for everybody, not just the kids. And then we get into the argument of, is it for kids or is it not, whatever. But the original trilogy captured that magic, not just for the kids, but for the old fans, for people who didn't know they were going to be fans, for older generations, for adults, for grandparents and everybody. The original trilogy was loved by all. The prequel trilogy is loved by a specific part of the fandom. It wasn't loved by all audiences, and the sequel trilogy is also loved by a specific part of the fandom. I think If you're going to try to capture the original trilogy magic, you need to focus on that magic of character and stories that unite us all. The prequels focus on the politics of a story. The sequels are focusing on the original trilogy story, but kind of focusing on destroying it in a way. It's very weird what the other two trilogies have been focusing on compared to what the original trilogy did. I think that the meaning of Star Wars has kind of gotten muddled up a little bit in the past 25 years. Planet Witaku asks, what Force ability would you like to see come back from Legends? I don't know. I really don't know. I think the Force Drain ability was pretty cool, honestly. Just draining the life from somebody. I think that'd be a really cool ability to bring back. Next question from John Cooper. He asked, which era of Star Wars do you want to live in? I think I answered that earlier, buddy. Curtis YZ asked, have you helped promote the Kenobi fan film? No, I've heard about it, but I didn't promote it or anything. Not yet, at least, I don't think. Tyler asks, should the Old Republic become canon? I don't think so. I think you need to keep the EU non-canon. I think you need to focus on new stories, and making the Old Republic canon confuses a lot of different things. Because then you have characters that survive the Old Republic that have stories that go way into the future as well that you would want to focus on, but since it's canon, it's like, do I focus on that? Do I not? It would get too confusing in my opinion. Brandon asks, where does the audio of Star Wars Explained saying, I don't know what the fuck your problem is, come from? That's not Star Wars Explained saying that. I've met him, actually. I have met Star Wars Explained. I met him at Star Wars Celebration last month. That was kind of interesting. But I didn't get him any audio of him saying that. That audio comes from Darks Nova. That's my intro audio. It's a completely different guy. They don't even look the same. And it looks like that's all the questions we have for today, guys. Thank you all for sticking around. I know it's been a lengthy video. These normally are. But it's always kind of nice to have a fun conversation and talk about the future and the past of Star Wars. So thank you all for joining. I'm Star Wars Only. Thank you for 30,000 subscribers. I'll see you all next time, and may the Force be with you. Always.